This presentation is going to be discussing awareness training and nervous habits during public speaking. The group members in this group are Laura Blodgett, Madeline DaVincenzi, Julia Mulhall, Morgan Atone, Margaret Phillips, and Tiffany Stanfield. To start, we're going to be talking about some literature related to this study. To start, public speaking anxiety is considered a social phobia. Public speaking anxiety is one of the most common psychological problems in the United States. It's estimated that the prevalence of public speaking anxiety ranges from 11% to 30% of Americans. Bartholomew and Houlihan even suggest that the prevalence of public speaking anxiety is as high as 1 in 5 individuals. Public speaking anxiety can impede on professional success, positive reputation, credibility, and various professional advantages. The competency of public speaking are a valuable asset. Public speaking anxiety leads to the communication impairments and the use of nervous habits during public speaking. Nervous habits include the use of filled pauses such as ah, and interjecting the word like, and clicking sounds made with the mouth are all notable nervous habits that are often discussed. Mancuso and Miltenberg suggest that the use of nervous habits during public speaking have the potential of negative social consequences. Much research treating nervous habits during public speaking have been successfully treated with the use of awareness training as a component of the intervention. So awareness training is when a participant is made aware of the target behavior when it occurs. It is often also a self-monitoring process. Awareness training is often a component of habit reversal training. Much research shows the use of habit reversal training is the most effective procedure when reducing habit behaviors or habit disorders. Habit reversal training incorporates 4 components of treatment, including awareness training, competing response practice, habit control motivation, and generalization training. Speiler and Miltenberg suggest that awareness training on its own may be successful at nervous behaviors during public speaking. The study that we replicated looks at the use of awareness training on its own. Additional researchers are examining the effectiveness of awareness training alone on various different behaviors. Using awareness training alone, Wright and Miltenberg were successful at teaching a 19-year-old student to demonstrate, identify, and record each instance of head and eyebrow tics. Awareness training was used alone and successfully reduced tics for a child with a chronic motor tic disorder. The use of awareness training has the potential to reduce the use of nervous habits during public speaking.
The purpose of the study is to measure the effectiveness of awareness training for decreasing nervous habits during public speaking. There were 6 master's students attending Ball State University that were used as participants. Laura Blodgett, Madeline DaVincenzi, Julia Mulhall, Morgan Atone, Margaret Phillips, and Tiffany Stanfield. The setting in which this study occurred was group video chats via Google Hangouts and YouTube Live. There were many materials needed, including a timer, a computer, data sheets, speech topics, paper to write down speech notes, 1 red-colored 8x11 piece of paper, 1 white 8x11 piece of paper, and a pen or pencil.
The behavior definitions that were observed during the research replication were filled pauses, tongue clicks, and likes. Filled pauses were defined as any occurrence of the use of a non-Semitic word or speech sound, or a word without meaning during or between sentences. Frequency of the uses of these non-Semitic words were scored upon the ending of the non-Semitic word. Examples of filled pauses include utterances such as or ah. Non-examples of a filled pause would be including clearing throat or coughing. Tongue clicks were defined as a speaker emitting a clicking or smacking sound with their tongue. This would be done either with the use of their lips, the roof of their mouth, or can be heard through the audio of a video. Frequency of the occurrence of tongue clicks was scored upon the ending of each smack sound or click sound. An example of a tongue click is smacking made with tongue suctioning on the roof of the mouth. A non-example includes licking, swallowing, or pursing of the lips. Lastly, likes were defined as any occurrence of the use of the word like in the speech that did not hold a meaning in the structure of the sentence or follow correct grammatical form. Frequency of the occurrence of like would be scored upon the ending of the use of like. Examples of incorrect uses of like include the speaker saying like before describing what someone said. For example, she was like, I really don't want to do that. Or saying like before recalling an event, and then she was like really excited about it. Or saying like when describing objects, persons, locations. For example, I had like 4 flowers. Or using like to fill a pause. Non-examples include the speaker saying like to describe interest. For example, I like ice cream. Or comparing 2 concepts or objects. For example, I am a lot like my mother. The research design used in this study was multiple baseline across participants. Data was collected on the occurrence of target behaviors using video recordings of both baseline and intervention sessions. Frequency was recorded separately for each type of target behavior. However, the graphs depict the total number of occurrences of all nervous behaviors per session.
For the baseline phase, 6 participants were given multiple topics and were instructed to complete no more than 10 minutes of research per topic. During research, participants could take notes on note cards, but could not make full sentences. All participants met via Google Hangouts to deliver speeches and collect data on others. During speech delivery, data collectors' faces remained expressionless, and they withheld gestures and feedback. The speeches lasted between 3 and 5 minutes. To start, one data collector counted down from 3 to 1 and pressed start on a timer as they said 1. When 3 minutes elapsed, a white sheet of paper was held up, and the data collector held up a red sheet when 5 minutes had lapsed. And that's when the speeches ended. Once all participants delivered their speeches, baseline was complete.
For the intervention, the primary data collector first discussed the behaviors observed during baseline with the participant. This response description involved a discussion about each of the participants' behaviors that were targeted for reduction. Those targeted behaviors included tongue clicks, filled pauses, and the inappropriate usage of the word like. It included individualized topographies and operational definitions. The PDC then showed the participant a video from the baseline session. While viewing the video, response detection was utilized to identify the target behaviors that were occurring. Then the participant chose a topic to speak about for 3 to 5 minutes. The participants were given 10 minutes to prepare for the speech. While speaking, the participant and the PDC raised their hand if the target behavior occurred during the beginning of the speech. For instance, if an was used in the speech, the PDC and the participant would both raise their hands. After the first 5 occurrences, the PDC will only raise their hand to prompt the participant if they fail to identify the occurrence within the first 2 seconds.
Here is an example of 2 post-awareness training speech sessions. This is an example of the use of the white and red cards as a time prompt. The use of a timer, which you cannot see, but the primary data collector is using a timer. The calm face, or the neutral face that the primary data collector has. And it's a good example of the type of topics that were discussed during the speech sessions. And you can also see that the 2 participants used the hand signals that were taught during the awareness training portion when they noticed that they were using the the behaviors that we were tracking, such as the filled pauses, the use of likes or tongue clicks, you can see that oftentimes that they were very aware of that. So these videos that you will see next are a good example of the use of the materials and the methods that we used.
For children, yes or no, and why? I choose no. I don't think that kids should get participation trophies. The reason is because I think that children need to learn how to earn things. If you get a participation trophy just for playing in a game and you're not winning, it's not teaching the children to work towards anything or to work harder. They're going to think that whatever they're doing currently is good enough and they're going to get things. I think that we're doing a lot of coddling for kids these days. Teachers can't take away recess anymore. You can't, in some schools, you can't put kids in timeout. And in a lot of schools, you're not allowed to give really any criticism in sports. And I think that that's a big problem for younger kids and older kids. My boyfriend coached a high school lacrosse team, and he would have it. They weren't doing as well as the other stars, somebody else in, and there were two times when a kid quit. Two different kids quit. They were kept out of the game because they were not playing. So I think that might be a result of this. You get credit for anything you do. You get credit for not trying your absolute best. You get to start game even though somebody else played better than you in practice. Because everyone should get credit. That's not how it works in competitive sports. You only be able to play when you have earned the position. And I think that to be able to really instill that in children to be able to act that way when they're older, you need to start when you're young. And that is why participation trophies are not a good idea. Because again, like I said, if you start a kid off thinking that any effort is good enough, you're not going to make it in a competitive sport. I played competitive sports my entire life. I played soccer all throughout college, and I had very hard coaches. And my parents were very hard on me too, but in a tasteful way. And they really constructed criticism, which made me want to do better because I wanted to make myself and my parents proud. I personally don't think that my parents would even have let me accept a participation trophy if I was young, unless I really earned the trophy that was being given to me. So, no participation trophies. That's my opinion. Yay!
Three, two, one, begin. Okay, so I'm going to talk about my life. It's an autobiography of Laura Blodgett. I was born on October 27, 1993 in Greensburg, Indiana. My parents are Tracy and Kelly Blodgett. I have an older brother named Travis and an older sister named Casey. My parents lived in a small rural house outside of Greensburg where we had a huge yard, lots of room to play. We were always rollerblading and sleeping outside in a tent with my siblings, playing with a neighbor girl. We were always running around, playing all the time, always outside. I remember one time my siblings set up a tent and it started to storm and I was asleep outside. And they went inside to go to bed in their beds and they left me outside in the tent. And I woke up at 5 a.m. so scared because my siblings were gone and it was windy and there was a hole in our tent. It was very scary. So I lived with my parents in that house until I was about 7. And then my parents divorced and me, my mom, and my siblings moved to a smaller house outside of town. I went to the same school, had the same friends, and I still saw my dad on the weekends. I went to North Decatur Elementary School, and I went to North Decatur Junior Senior High School. In elementary school, I had the two best of friends I met in first grade. Their names were Kyle and Jill, and Kyle and Jill and I have been friends for 20 years now. Jill and Kyle are both going to be my wedding. Jill's going to be my maid of honor, and Kyle's going to be my bridesman. I graduated North Decatur with 76 kids. We had a super small grade. We were all super close. We all go to each other's weddings and congratulate each other on having children. We all stay in contact, and we're all really there for each other. After high school, I went through college at Hanover College in Southern Indiana. It was a liberal arts school, and it was also really tiny. My graduating class was like 300. There was a total of 1,200 kids at the school, so it was a super small college as well. There is where I met my fiance. He was in our fraternity, and I met him one night at a party, and I met him when I was 20, and we'd been friends for a couple of years, and then we started dating. After we both graduated college, then I moved up here to Carmel, Indiana. I worked at a summer camp as a camp counselor, and there is where I met an ABA therapist who got me into the field. I had never even heard of ABA, didn't know anything about it. I started at an ABA center in the summer of 2016, and I've been there ever since. I started as a therapist and worked in the early learner program. So the kids that I work with range from 2 to 7. Then I was a therapist for 2 years, and then I started school and got a position as a program manager apprentice. So I work directly under a behavior analyst, and we have our own caseload of 7 kids. And our youngest kid that we have on our caseload is 2, and our oldest kid is 6. And they range in many functionalities from super low functioning to headed to school. So it's been a weird path, but I ended up doing what I wanted to do, and now I'm in grad school learning about it. Yay.
While each speaker made their speech, there were 2 other members of the group acting as primary data collectors. Each primary data collector took data for the entirety of the participant's speech, and then IOA was calculated. This was done for 33% of speeches, which equals out to 5 out of 15 sessions for each speaker, making a total of 30 speeches that IOA was taken for. The IOA calculations were total count IOA, which is calculated by dividing the smaller count by the larger count and multiplying the answer by 100. Mean count per interval IOA was calculated by adding sessions 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5's IOA results together, and then dividing them by the number of intervals, which is 5, and times that by 100. Exact count per interval IOA was calculated by the number of sessions that were 100%, and dividing that by the number of total intervals, which is 5, and then timesing that by 100. Each participant had 2 data collectors. From those 2 data collectors, IOA was calculated. This table shows that IOA was at a higher percentage when habits were decreasing with each session. The assigned research assistant for each speech watched the speech session recorded on YouTube Live. While the research assistant watched the speech, they recorded on the primary data collector checklist. They placed a check mark next to what was supposed to be done if the primary data collector completed the step, or an X if the primary data collector did not complete the step. The number of check marks for all steps was divided by the total number of all check marks and X's for all steps from the 33% of sessions observed to determine treatment integrity. Any steps that were not applicable were noted with an NA and were not considered in the treatment fidelity calculation. For example, if a speaker ended before the 5-minute red paper was shown, this would not count as an X and would not be considered in the calculation. Treatment fidelity was 100% across all 33% of sessions observed. What you see here is the primary data collector checklist, and this is what the research assistant would refer to and put checks or X's next to. In baseline 1, the primary data collector states a vocal countdown for the speaker to begin, which is 3, 2, 1, and begins the timer simultaneously to start. The primary data collector raises a white sheet of paper when 3 minutes has passed. Primary data collector raises a red sheet of paper when the 5 minutes has ended. During the speech, the primary data collector will prompt the speaker if they have paused for 15 seconds or more, and/or will prompt the speaker to continue speaking if the speaker attempts to end the speech before 3 minutes has passed. The primary data collector is to keep a neutral face and not make any comments unless referring to the point before, and refrains from facial expressions. For the treatment, the primary data collector will discuss with the speaker what target behaviors were observed during their speech. The primary data collector explains to the speaker that they are to raise their right hand every time there is an occurrence of the targeted behavior. The primary data collector will also raise their hand with the speaker for the first 5 instances. They will stop raising their hand after those first 5 instances and then only raise their hand if the speaker fails to raise their hand by recognizing their own occurrence of the behavior. The primary data collector explains that the speaker will do this until they are able to identify, by raising their right hand, 100% of all occurrences of the targeted behaviors. Post-treatment is the same checklist as baseline 1.
So now we're going to discuss the individual results of each participant. To start, we are going to discuss participant Laura.
Participant Laura stayed in the baseline for 5 sessions, with each session having 7 to 10 instances of nervous habits. During baseline, participant Laura's most occurring habit was filled pauses. After there was 100% accuracy achieved during awareness training, participant Laura entered the post-awareness session. During the baseline phase, the average of occurrences was 8.4 and 4.2 for the post-awareness training session. The average range was 7 to 10 occurrences and 2 to 8 occurrences for the post-awareness training.
Participant Tiffany stayed in baseline phase for 6 sessions, with each session having 3 to 4 instances of nervous habits. During baseline, participant Tiffany's most occurring habits were filled pauses. After 100% accuracy was achieved during awareness training, participant Tiffany entered the post-awareness session. During baseline, the average occurrence of behaviors was 3.5 and 0.77 in the post-awareness training phase. Behaviors ranged from 3 to 4 occurrences during baseline and 0 to 3 during post-awareness training.
Participant Julia had the second highest rates of habits during the first baseline speech, with 20 instances of habit behaviors. Of these 20 instances of habit behaviors, 19 instances were the use of filled pauses. Participant Julia entered post-awareness training after 100% accuracy of self-awareness during the awareness training session. Prior to awareness training, nervous behaviors were at an average of 10.4 instances per session. Following awareness training, nervous behaviors decreased to an average of 1.9 instances. The range of instances of habits during the baseline phase for participant Julia is 9 to 20 instances, and the range of occurrences of habits per session during the post-awareness training phase is 0 to 3 instances.
Participant Madeline stayed in the baseline phase for 8 sessions, with each session having 0 to 4 instances of nervous habits. During baseline, participant Madeline's most occurring habits were tongue clicks. After there was 100% accuracy achieved during awareness training, participant Madeline entered post-awareness training. During baseline, the average occurrences of behaviors was 3.2 and 0.92 in the post-AT phase. Behaviors range from 0 to 3 occurrences during baseline and 0 to 4 during post-awareness training.
Participant Morgan participated in 6 baseline sessions before seeing a behavior change. The participant then entered the post-awareness training session after 100% accuracy for self-awareness was reached. During baseline, the average of habits per session was 1.83, and the range was 1 to 4. During post-awareness training, the average of habits per session was 0.66, and the range was 0 to 2. Total average of all behaviors was 1.13, and total range was 0 to 4. Throughout all 15 sessions, participant Morgan had a total of 7 filled pauses, 1 instance of the incorrect usage of the word like, and 9 tongue clicks.
Participant Margaret displayed the highest rate of nervous habits during the initial baseline speech, with 24 instances of nervous habit behaviors. Of the 24 instances of habit behaviors in the opening session, 20 were filled pauses. Participant Margaret entered the post-awareness training after 100% accuracy of self-awareness during the self-awareness training session. Before the awareness training, nervous behaviors occurred at an average rate of 14.2 instances per session. During the post-awareness phase, the average of habits per session for participant Margaret decreased to an average of 4.8, with a range of 3 to 6 instances.
Here is the multiple baseline graph. It is pretty small on the screen, but this just shows the sessions in which people entered post-awareness training and the different graphs of all the participants.
Based upon the multiple baseline graph representing all 6 of the participants' results, it can be concluded that treatment of awareness training was effective in decreasing nervous habits during public speaking. Participant Margaret and Julia had considerably less nervous habits post-awareness training compared to their baseline. Participant Morgan, Laura, Maddie, and Tiffany had at least 1 or more post-awareness training sessions overlapping with baseline. However, towards the end of the post-awareness training session, the nervous habits had decreased for participant Morgan, Laura, Maddie, and Tiffany. The most successful participants in terms of post-awareness training results included Margaret and Julia. Margaret's baseline average was 14.2, and after post-awareness training decreased to 4.8. Julia's baseline average was 10.4, and after post-awareness training decreased to 1.9. The other participants' post-awareness training averages were less significant compared to baseline, but still exhibited a decrease in nervous habits.
There were many limitations of the study. First, sample size was too small, which created limited causal and correlational effects from the data. Second, there was not a representative distribution of the entire population, and thus applying the results to the entire population was not possible. All group members were master's students and women. Another limitation of the study is self-reported data was not independently verified. There was also limited time to conduct the study, which affected how well the study was completed. Some other potential limitations include selective memory, which is remembering or not remembering events or experiences that have occurred before. Second, telescoping, which is remembering events or experiences that occurred at some point in the past. Third, attribution, attributing positive events to one's own agency, but attributing negative events to external forces. And 4, exaggeration, embellishing events as more significant than is factual from data.
Here are the references that were used for various resources as far as the literature review. And this is also the group contributions for each group member. And if you have any questions regarding this topic, please let any of the group members know.